I am really honored to introduce both Zulay and our friend and a mentor. His name is Peter Crone. He is known as the mindset architect. You will recognize him if you saw the documentary Heal on Netflix. We wanted to bring him on and ask him a few very important questions in regards to mindset right now, and hopefully get some tools of how we can manage stress and kind of move together collectively during this time. So Peter, are you on?
I am here, yeah.
Hey, beautiful. Hi.
Hi.
I have a very important question to ask you.
Okay.
I was going over your website and there was a quote on there that really stood out from Marcel Proust. And it says, "The journey of true discovery lies not in finding new lands, but in looking through new eyes."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, in your perspective, like how do we look through new eyes right now in terms of like waking up from the societal patterns that have oppressed Black lives for so long?
Well, before I address the question, it's not lost on me that I'm here as a white man amongst an incredible group of very articulate, educated, impassioned, multicolored, multi-raced human beings. And it's beyond humbling and honoring that you invited me to join the conversation so that I could contribute in whatever way I can. And I've been listening from the beginning. There was some workers here, so I didn't want to be disturbing anyone, but I listened right from the beginning with Jamal, who I've had the pleasure of sort of direct messaging a little bit prior to this, and Angela and Laz, and obviously Roland and Stephen. And there's so much, and Bracia, there's so much that I've learned from each of you. So I truly hope that I get to contribute something that does make a difference. And as Julie said, it's really speaking from more the mechanics of who we are as humans and perhaps understand why we do the things we do. So there's so many things I could speak to. I just got so moved by Stephen because I can just feel his passion. And my dog was called Krishna. It was a Belgian Tavern, and that breed is renowned for its beautiful, significant black face. It's one of their markings. And the reason I named him Krishna was precisely for the point that Stephen was speaking to, which is what he represented in terms of this world of possibility, but also karma or dharma, whatever way you want to say it. And as Angela said so beautifully, you know, when we were each in the womb of our own mothers, we were preparing for this in ways that perhaps we were oblivious to, but nonetheless, we're here because we're called to be in action. And it reminds me of the quote by Mother Teresa, who said, "I know God won't give me anything I can't handle. I just wish he wouldn't trust me so much." And, you know, these are scary times, and there's so much uncertainty, which is one of the things I speak to, sort of the recognition that life itself is uncertainty, that none of us know. But collectively, we get to forge, we get to create, we get to declare what is it that we're all committed to. And I think what's happening right now is, as painful as it is in the world of duality. There is this abhorrent, heinous, disgusting revelation of oppression that has been there like a societal cancer. And as Will Smith said, you know, it's not that racism's getting worse, it's getting filmed. And I thought it was such an eloquent quote, right? Because I'm oblivious to much of what's been going on. I'm humbled by how much I'm learning, even in the discourse that we've had today. I have done an inordinate amount of learning and research and education over the last few weeks. And it's humbling and it's eye-opening, but there is this recognition that this societal cancer that has been there is coming to the surface. And what I want to speak to today is the healing process, right? Which is why I know Julie and Zulay asked me to come on here. And there's three distinct stages. Part of my work is in the science of Ayurveda, which is from India. It's very similar to Chinese medicine. And it's a beautiful science, 5,000 years old, way surpasses anything that the Western medicine system claims to do as it manages symptoms, right? It's not a healthcare system so much as a disease management system. And again, you know, it's incredible that Roland was speaking to, like, we've got to make the distinction between from the streets to the suites, and also how You know, Laz, I didn't understand, or I didn't know about the police brutality bonds, right? And how Wall Street benefits from suffering. And if you look at another system of healthcare, pharmaceutical companies benefit from people being sick. They don't celebrate when their drug sales drop every month, right? Otherwise, that would be a commitment to health. So if we look at all of these systems that are in place, they're actually the antithesis of what they proclaim to stand for. And I think that's the thing that gets my goat. That's the thing that gets me pissed off, is that, you know, we're giving billions and billions of dollars to pharmaceutical companies right now to, you know, create some vaccine with all due respect, to a virus that affects so few people at the end of the day. And how could that money be redistributed in a way that truly makes an impact, right? So that's where I feel much of the real looting is going on, is in these suites that Roland spoke to. So I love that everybody's aware of what's going on, and what I hope to inspire and at least educate is how can we take action. So the healing process, as I was saying, especially through the eyes of Ayurveda, there are 3 distinct stages. And it's so beautiful because it's so simple, and I hope we can all, and I hope, you know, please take it, use it within your own communities. But the first stage is you've got to identify, as Zulay said at the beginning, the root cause. The second stage is we've got to balance the effects of the previous root cause, right? So if you follow that, so there's a root cause, then we have to balance whatever the effects of over time of whatever that previous root cause was. And then the third phase is you've got to create a new paradigm for existence. So everybody who's spoken to this today, it's been so beautiful, because what is the root cause? The root cause really is pure ignorance. It may seem like a very trite or crass example, but if you put 2 cars next to each other, identical make, identical model, identical year, literally in every regard, it is precisely the same car. But one is colored black and one is colored white. Anybody with an ounce of intelligence knows it's precisely the same car. There's no argument. And so it is pure ignorance. And by ignorance, I don't mean that as a judgment. I mean it, the lack of knowing, the lack of understanding, the lack of education, that there is still the distinction that somebody of color, somebody of minority, even, you know, look, Me Too movement, this wasn't that long ago where we recognized misogyny, you know, alongside racism. It's the same energy of in some way bringing a belittled perception to somebody that justifies harm. And so that's the root cause. If we're going to transcend this and create a new paradigm, which I'm so like hopeful for the fact that we got so many beautiful people on this call, and people that I'm working with behind the scenes in my own community, my own tribe, educating people to create a new paradigm, we can only do it if we're aware of what is the current root cause. I think we spend a lot of time in the healing, right? That's like trimming the weeds and the yard looks nice, but you haven't actually dealt with something. And so similar to Stephen's point about its education, especially with our children, I've been encouraged by so many of these videos that young white girls and boys are putting up, where they're having discourse, even arguments with their own parents, trying to educate their parents about racism. And you can hear in the background, as disgusting as it is to hear, the justification of a parent as to why, no, maybe he deserved it, or no, you don't understand, most of them are like, it's actually, it makes me cringe to hear some of these conversations, but it's hopeful to hear that the white children, the kids, are actually recognizing the ignorance of their own parents' narratives. So, and that's really what I wanted to speak to, is this consensus reality that is part of the subconscious, and similar to the way that Roland so beautifully, like the cascade that he just articulated from the world to America, to the States, to the cities, to the neighborhoods. I mean, it's so beautiful the way he articulated, and I do it in a similar way when I help my athletes, my executives, my entertainers, my stay-at-home parents. It doesn't matter, is we've got to recognize what we're looking at are the results right now. We're looking at the abhorrent, disgusting results, but why? Because of the previous actions, the behaviors. But why are the actions and behaviors the way they are? Because of the current beliefs and emotions. And that's not enough. We have to go, okay, but why do people believe and emote and feel what they believe and feel? Because of the subconscious narratives that have been inherited from generation to generation to generation, such that it's become consensus reality. It's just the way it is. But it's not. It's programming. I like to use analogies and metaphors. If any one of us open up our laptop and we go to a very popular program, say iTunes, We don't get upset when we can't edit photos in iTunes. It would make no sense. We understand that iTunes is programmed in a way such that we can buy, listen to, look at music. We understand that's the way we programmed it. So likewise, in the current society that we live in, there is such an insidious, deep-rooted programming, no different to any other software on a computer, that is creating the beliefs that we are currently up against with the actions that are leading to these atrocities. And it's one thing to ask people to change behaviors, and that will last for a minute. But this is to Roland's point again. We've seen that show. It's come and gone every time. It's no different than if I work with someone who's trying to lose weight. You know, you look at The Biggest Loser, the producers of the NBC show, they asked me to come in and say, why do 90% of our contestants end up back putting on weight? I'm like, well, because all you did was change behavior. You didn't change the deep-seated narrative of that person's lack of inadequacy, their feeling of insecurity, their feeling of scarcity, their worthlessness. And so, again, I get very passionate about this, because if we don't get down to the deep-seated narratives that people have about humanity as a whole, then we can do all the protesting we want. And it's super, super inspiring to be involved in that, to see people doing that. And I hope it truly does influence change, but we have to educate people on the pure ignorance that they have, that there is any sense of difference between any of us. You know, it's easy to say, okay, like this current argument of all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. And I've had to educate so many of my friends recently. I said, look, in those 3 stages I gave you, remove the root cause, 2, balance and heal the effects of the previous root cause, and then 3, create a new paradigm. Balancing the effects of the previous root cause. The root cause is this hideous oppression. The balancing is Black Lives Matter. That is the balancing right now. We don't get to all lives matter until we create a new paradigm. Do you understand? And when I break it down, they seem to get that. It's like, you know, I've seen so many beautiful metaphors, like you're in a nice neighborhood. Yes, all houses matter, but these 2 houses are burning down right now. So, so in terms of those 3 cascades, I hope people can understand that we've got to recognize the deep-seated narratives that are creating the thoughts and beliefs that then lead to the atrocious behaviors. Then right now what we're doing is, you know, the donating, the redistribution of funds, the rewriting of laws and policies. That is the healing that's currently happening. Conversations like this, and then eventually the bigger picture. Yes, we want to get to a world of kindness, humanity. You know, like Deval said, like our superpower is ultimately love. The same that Jamal said. You know, love versus fear. Fear is currently running the way that we all exist. It's impacting all of us, and the reason it is because it's a tough subject to talk about, but really what's happening here is death, you know, and literally and figuratively, right? Because if we look at what happened, which I feel is like inspirational for humanity, the SpaceX, the launch of the shuttle, right? The physics of that process, there is the most amount of intensity, which speaks to Stephen's point, as you get closer to the end of the orbit, right? As that shuttle gets closest to leaving the Earth's orbit, there is the most amount of friction. Now, what does that represent in the times that we're currently in? We're getting close to the edge of an orbit that has been so oppressive for so long, and there is now the most amount of friction. And in order to break through, to create this new space, this new paradigm, we have to continue to forge forward. It takes the most amount of rocket fuel, which is all of our efforts to contribute, to educate, to learn, to get out on the streets, to make difference, to, as Roland said, to go from one house, one change maker, through the streets, to the blocks, to the neighborhoods, to the cities. We need the most amount of effort to get beyond the orbit of oppression, and such that we can enter ultimately the space of, you know, liberty and justice for all, which I find, you know, it's beautiful words, but it's blank, right? It's empty, it's meaningless. Just like the land of the free and the home of the brave. You know, it's one thing for us all to stand up and sing that, but it's not actually what's happening. And one of the things I teach people is integrity. You've got to have your actions and your words align if you're going to be powerful and impactful in life. And right now, you know, we are a nation of pretentious people. And what I mean by that is there's pretense. We lie. We pretend things are okay and they're not. They're just not. And I'm so happy that so much of this is coming to the surface so that we can bring awareness such that we can impact change, and that eventually together we can create a new paradigm. And the last note on that new paradigm, I recently heard about Wilmot Collins. I don't know if you've heard, the new mayor of Helena in Montana, first African-American mayor who's been elected. That to me is a sign of, you know, the new paradigm, not just because he's African-American, but because he's a decent human being who comes from kindness, love, and equality. So there are glimpses. We're cracking the dam. I hope the way that I've delineated the healing process is impactful for people, and we can implement that to get to the deep narratives we're having in our homes, the narratives we're having with friends, the narratives we're having with children, so that we can get rid of the most fundamental lie that people have been stuck in, that there is some sense of inequality inherent in life, and there just isn't. There just isn't. It's a lie. Last example I'll give you, and then I'll shut up. You know, it was only a couple of thousand years ago that people thought the world was flat, right? And that was a narrative of the subconscious. And if you thought the world was flat, because you got the evidence, right? The evidence is, look out at the horizon, I can see it's flat. Within that construct, people have to generate a fear. And that fear is, I don't want to fall off the edge, right? It's totally logical, but it only exists within the lie that the world is flat. Now, what do we have in current times? The lie is that there's, you know, African Americans are less than, they're criminal, whatever. There's a whole slew of bullshit lies. When you live within that, you have to generate a fear of oppression. You just have to. We found out that the world wasn't flat. Shocking, right? And so now the fear dissipates. It's a dissolution process. Not only do I not want to be part of the problem, I want to be part of the dissolution, not the solution. The solution is the antidote to, and it's a reaction of, a previous problem. We have to recognize it's a dissolution, it's a death of the lie that we've all been living in, that there's a difference between any of us. Now, it's easy to say, but until we educate people to get that, as simple as the world is not fucking flat, it's not. You're not going to argue for that. It has to be that categorically clear until such time that we have different thoughts, different feelings, different actions, and different results. And until we get to that root, the ignorance of thinking that there is a difference between any of us, that any life is somehow less than, then, you know, we've got work to do. I wrote one last thing. I wrote this article called Choose Love, which is very poetic, and it might seem esoteric, and like, you know, Jamal spoke to, and even like Deval, like that's our superpower. Choosing love is our nature. That's who we are. And I said, if you're not quite ready to choose love, at least stop harm. And that is a nice bridge to, if you can't jump to love, fine, I get it. But stop the fucking insanity of hurting people, regardless of gender, ethnicity, age. That at least is a step in the right direction. I hope that helps. I'm pretty passionate about this damn thing, but I you know.
Peter, that was
Incredible.